There are some stories that grow as they are described. The limit between the truth and the legend is deleted. The Zodiac killer was such a figure. His identity remained a secret, despite years of research and hundreds of hours of investigations. An investigation that did not result in a name. So, who was Zodiac? Today, the terrible murders in the shadow of Zodiac. We will examine the mysterious letters he sent and the unknown details stored behind him in depth. But first, I will take you to the night where his story begins. The calendars were showing December 20th, 1968. The weather was cold. The sky was covered with stars. The layer was an ordinary night for a young couple in the small town of California. 17-year-old Betty Lou Jensen and 16-year-old David Faraday had had a dinner, then spent time with friends, around 20 to 30. The duo was in the car. Their plans were simple, to stay alone in a quiet place to chat. But the romantic night of the duo would return to a nightmare. A silhouette appeared in the dark. He slowly wandered around the car. David noticed the approaching man and stretched his head to look through the window. But now it was too late. The cold barrel of the gun was directed. The sound of an explosion helped the air. The bullet hit David's head and killed him instantly. Betty Lou jumped out of the car in a panic, tried to escape with the life of life. But the gunshot echoed one after the other. 5 bullets were stuck in his body and collapsed. The silence collapsed. The killer slowly retreated. Behind him, he left an unresolved riddle. For the policeman who came to the scene, this seemed like an ordinary murder. Until a few months later. Until the moment the murders were attached to each other. August 1st, 1969. 3 major newspapers in San Francisco found letters with a strange message when they checked their mail in the early morning. In the letter, a person introduced himself as Zodiac, and much more frightening, he said he would continue to kill. Zodiac did not only tell the pleasure of killing in his letters. At the same time, he was sending a hard to get out of a puzzle. If you can solve this password, you can understand who I am, he wrote. Code crushers tried to solve this password for months, and in the end, a couple deciphered Zodiac's message. The message was as follows. I love to kill people because it was very fun. Hunting in nature gives me the biggest excitement. Because people are the most dangerous animals. Unfortunately, there was no information about who Zodiac was in the message. Zodiac took action again months after the first murder. The calendars were showing July 4th, 1969. That night, it was the United States' Day of Independence and the city was illuminated with fireworks. But at the Blue Rock Springs Park in Vallejo, there would be a terrible horror. 22-year-old Darlene Ferrin and 19-year-old Michael Maggio were spending time in the park. There was no one around them. Suddenly, a car with a closed car approached them. The man sitting inside watched them for a while, then walked away. Michael thought it was strange, but he didn't care much about it. However, after a few minutes, the same car returned and stood next to it. A man holding a flashlight came out. Michael thought he was a man, but a second later, a gun appeared next to the flashlight. The sound of the explosion helped the air. The bullets rained one after the other. Michael was shot on his shoulder and his face screamed in horror. Darlene was the target of bullets. Zodiac walked back quietly, got into his car and walked away. Minutes later, those living near the park heard the gunshots and called the police. But it was too late. Darlene Ferrin had lost his life, but Michael Maggio survived miraculously. He would be the most important witness to capture Zodiac. Michael gave a definition of the attacker. A man with middle overweight, short-haired, round-faced. Zodiac had a witness for the first time, but even that wasn't enough to stop him. September 27th, 1969. This time the stage was Lake Berryessa in Napa County. University students Brian Hartnell and Cecilia Shepard went to the lake shore to enjoy a beautiful autumn day. They had a picnic and enjoyed the peaceful nature. But that day would be the scene of the darkest moments of their lives. While they sat peacefully on the shore of the lake, there was a strange movement in the forest. A man came out of the trees with a gun in his hand. There was a jet black outfit on it. A big white cross was processed on his chest. And in his mind, Zodiac's famous mask. The man approached them, pointed his gun. he said in a cold voice. "I have to escape to Mexico. Give the keys of your car." But Zodiac was lying. Suddenly, the young couple tied the ropes. Then he took out his knife out of his pocket. The knife landed in a row. He stuck in Brian's body 6 times. Cecilia screamed painful. But Zodiac did not show mercy. He stabbed him too. Then he slowly put the bloody knife in his pocket and walked away. But this time, he made a mistake. He left a message on the hood of the car. He put a bloody history into the victim's car and drew the cross in the circle, which was a symbol of gold. This was one of the biggest signs of Zodiac's identity. October 11, 1969. A taxi driver in the Presidio Heights area of San Francisco received passengers later in the night. The passenger's face was covered with shadows. 29-year-old Paul Stein thought he had had an ordinary night of work. But this journey would be his last journey. The passenger took off his gun and put it on Paul's head. A single bullet sound echoed. Blood spread to the windshield of the taxi. Zodiac cut a piece of Paul Stein's shirt and put it in his pocket. That night, Zodiac became the most dangerous killer of San Francisco. The crimes of the Zodiac murderer are deeply remembered not only by the murders he committed, but also by letters he sent about these murders. These letters have become evidence of the most important clues to the identity of the killer, as well as a tool that increases the fear and curiosity of him. Passwords in your letters. With their complex structures, it has been tried to be solved for years, and it still contains parts that have not been fully interpreted. In July 1969, the Zodiac killer attracted attention with his first letter to the police and newspapers immediately after the murder of Lake Berryessa. In the letter, Zodiac described himself as a killer V and confessed his murders. However, the real attracted part was an encrypted message at the end of the letter. Zodiac, in his letter, he threatened that the police could not catch him and would do more of the murders. This was part of his purpose of creating fear. This first letter would continue with Zodiac's murders and encrypted messages, which was more complex in each new post. He was playing a clever game with both the police and the public. Every new password made himself an even more mysterious and dangerous figure. But also passwords. He attracted the attention of both the people and journalists, which enabled the killer to achieve his purpose. The passwords in Zodiac's letters were not just a series of encrypted characters. It was a challenge that those who tried to solve them would be one step ahead. A few times, Zodiac said that his real identity would emerge if his password was solved at the end of his letter. The most famous of these passwords. It is a password known as the Zodiac password Izan, consisting of 340 characters. This password was sent to a newspaper in 1969 and took 51 years to dissolve. Zodiac had developed a unique encryption method by combining complex symbols, letters and numbers in his passwords. These passwords were an important indicator of Zodiac's intelligence and game desire, especially as it tried to be solved. Dissolution of the password. As a result of years of efforts by police and cryptologists, it was achieved in 2020. Zodiac's 340-character password was a reflection of the murderer's frightening and full nature. At the time of his post, those who tried to solve this password were not only police and journalists, but also amateur cryptologists. Many theories of this password have been put forward for years, but no results have been achieved. Zodiac. He stated that he would not explain his identity unless he was solved in his letter, and this was a clue about the murderer's desire to play with the public and the media. However, in 2020, this password finally managed to be solved. The text, which emerged with the dissolution of the password, had a very strange content. In the encrypted message, Zodiac states that he was doing a good job and he wanted to continue to kill people. It was clearly seen that this message was based on the desire of the killer to show power and power. However, the dissolved password had not provided any concrete information about its identity. Zodiac not only sent passwords, but also wrote letters to police and journalists, but also often challenges. In these letters, his arrogant and superior attitudes often stand out. In the early 1970s, Zodiac had become a celebrity. Every letter he sends attracts the attention of the people and the media. It was fear. His constant desire to communicate with him had a sense of curiosity for him and increased doubts. Another important point was that Zodiac always portrayed himself as a kind of justice figure in his letters. In most of his letters, It was implied that the people he killed were not sacrifices, but there were figures necessary for him. Zodiac could show his massacres as a means of purification or justice. Although Zodiac's letters help us understand the psychological structure of the killer, it is still insufficient to solve its identity. The encrypted messages he sends show his desire to play and the desire to create a mystery. However, each new letter allows us to take one more steps, but prevents us from solving Zodiac's identity. Zodiac passed on history books, not only with his crimes, but also with his psychological plays. His letters had a unique effect on both fear and curiosity. However, these letters are still not able to reveal their identity, and perhaps it will remain a secret.